Welcome back. Give it a minute or two. All right, welcome back. We're going to be doing this again with another tier list, and I promised I would do this with my other albums and stuff. Or when I was doing the albums list, I was going to do a Radiohead tier list and everything. So we'll just go here. I'm going to open up a new tab just for Rate Your Music, just so I can use it as a reference for this guy. Cool. Yep, just Radiohead, alt rock, Brit pop, experimental rock, IDM. Yeah, that's about it. I would say maybe some indie-tronic elements, some art pop in there. Just looking at everything, I think that's about it. Let me see what they have to say. Yeah, alt rock, art rock, art pop, electronic. Oh, it's just electronic music. Chamber pop. Yeah, I could see that. I'll get into it in a later list. But anyway, yeah, let's just go ahead and do this list. So again, the format here is S tier would be out of their albums, how good it would be, not out of in general albums and stuff. Anyway, yeah, we'll just go there. So, we're going to be doing King of Limbs first, which came out in 2011, and that was probably, I would say, it's the first album I listened, well, I don't know if it was the first I listened to by them, but it's the first that came out when I started getting into them. But it's in a way more experimental, it's on the, if you made a flow chart of them in terms of their overall experimentation and everything, you wanted more experimental stuff, it would be more so than Amnesiac, definitely Kid A, but this is their most experimental album. I think that they go into the realm of electronic music in, and it has the least not deserving, but what would you say, probably it's really hard to say. Just overall doesn't pan out as well and stuff. So I was gonna put it there in the C tier, and I only really remember songs like Codex and not Mr. Magpie, but Lotus Flower is it. I just really only go back for maybe like 2 songs off of there. It's glitch pop is what I'm thinking of, yeah, because it has a little bit of IDM and electronic music. It's glitch pop is what I'm thinking of. Bloom is fine, but I really only like, I don't even have this saved, I don't think, out of their albums on my Spotify. I think I just have Lotus Flower and Codex. It's definitely a deep cut in their discography, so I would actually recommend this is the last thing you listen to. Even more so than their debut album, Pablo Honey. So, that being said, all right, so their next one, A Moon-Shaped Pool, which is actually after King of Limbs. This is in 2016, and I actually went and saw them live for the first time, well, actually for the only time, during this album tour and stuff. And this is an easy A-tier album. I don't think it quite accomplishes the goal of being a well-rounded album per se, but it sticks the landing in if most not all the songs. It just takes a little bit more of the balance between that. So the 5-year hiatus that Radiohead goes through from the King of Limbs to here, there's a lot of side projects that go on, and you see Johnny Greenwood especially. I think he works with a lot of film scores in the meantime, so he's working with a lot of string arrangements, and you can very much tell on the opening track Burn the Witch where that comes from. Tom York has been doing his side project, just his just basically under his name, and then he did another one which I think was Atoms for Peace with one of the other members. I can't remember. I think it was not Colin Greenwood, but it might have been the guy that Nigel Godrich I think it might have been, and he also the bassist from Red Hot Chili Peppers, Flea. So you see a lot of, and he goes in more into the glitch pop IDM influences. So I really thought that the King of Limbs was more of like a Tom York side project, if anything. But there's a little bit of that mixed in here, and then they get back more into the electronic, experimental rock sounding stuff. But it's more with an art pop flavor to it because you add in those. Again, you add in those elements of the string arrangements that Johnny Greenwood was working on in those film scores. And then there's a lot of slow burning tracks. I heard this is actually like their most depressing album. So far, I would say. But anyway, so yeah, Burn the Witch, Daydreaming is a really good slow burner of a song. And I don't know if I would almost categorize it as slowcore, but yeah, they open up with that song each time. They're doing tours and stuff, so I really like that. But anyway, so basically, yeah, there's that. There's True Love Waits, which is the closing track off of this, which is really nice too. I'm trying to remember what else there is on this. Yeah, but it's definitely a harder listen to. I wouldn't recommend it being your first listen if you're diving into their discography, but it's definitely one of the more complete albums by theirs. Ambient, yeah, it's more ambient pop than slowcore, I guess is what it is. That's what I'm getting at with Daydreaming. So, Identikit, Full Stop, maybe present tense, but I definitely like. It's definitely very top heavy for me in terms of the track listing. But yeah, no, I was very happy with this coming off of the King of Limbs and everything. So yeah, I'm also just gonna turn down my music a little bit. Anyway, yeah. So that being said, now we get to Pablo Honey, which is their first album, and it's basically the most straightforward alt rock 90s alternative. Britpop mix of an album, and I think the Needle Drop put it best in his criticism of this album when he was doing a ranking of all these albums. He said it's like the worst crime it commits is just sounding like its contemporaries, and that is a very accurate way of putting it. So I'm just going to put it down in the C tier because it's really telling that a band's generally considered their worst album is their first album. It's pretty telling parameter or a measure of a band when everything they've done after that is considered better. And I don't know. I don't know if I for me personally, I think the experimentation in the King of Limbs is a little bit too weird versus the innocence and I guess lack of experience with the 90s alt rock sound that Radiohead does on their first album. But Creep's on this album, so obviously there's that. You can play these. No, it's Anyone Can Play Guitar is another good track from there, and I can't remember what, but it's a notorious meme in the community and stuff. Like I've seen a video or something of Tom York that where they were taking requests to play certain songs, and literally someone said, "Can you play Anyone Can Play Guitar?" And he just shook his head in disapproval to the fans. I thought that was funny. Oh, and yeah, it's a little bit of a grunge sound too. So it's very much they're wearing their influences on their sleeves on this. But How Do You is another song, and I probably say You is on there too. I always used to think it was How Do You Do, but yeah, no, it's very forgettable and stuff. I think there's definitely, I mean, they even made a better version of the sound later on. That we'll get into and stuff. But yeah, there's just bands that did that sound better in each category they did, which was Britpop, 90s alternative rock, and grunge. They just happened to dip their toes into it right then, and I just thought it was eh. Okay, the next one, Kid A. That is an easy S tier. This is coming off of OK Computer, which is basically what I'll talk about later and stuff like that. But basically, at the turn of the decade, they decided that instead of going more deeper into the alt rock territory, they wanted to incorporate elements of electronic and IDM music, and I think some glitch pop. But if you are a big fan of the '90s IDM scene, with people that were already playing around with those sounds, like Aphex Twin, what is the other one I was talking about earlier? I know Bjork took a lot of that influence on her albums there with Post, and I can't remember the one where she's really dressed up, and it's like her most critically acclaimed album. I just can't remember what it's called. But anyway, that and Portishead. The Portishead self-titled, or not self-titled, but debut album, their main elements are playing around with a bunch of IDM music. And so Radiohead took a lot of those influences and stuff, and they basically just like swapped out all their guitars, not all of them, but most of their instruments for electronic ones, and they basically had to teach themselves like music theory in the sense to have to basically do that. So this is their first album, I think that, you know, maybe not first, but I think this is their most atmospheric album. I don't know how I describe that better, but it's a really good, just basically the kind of I don't know if you can really tell on this, but I'll go to Kid A. But basically, when you see this, I don't really have too many examples of albums that are pretty good representation, or album covers that are pretty good representations of the music that follows with it. But I'd say Kid A is a pretty good example because it's very dark and brooding atmosphere with a weird digital like 90s like Windows 94 style aesthetic going on here. And that's just kind of like a teaser to kind of the music that you're going to get into with the sort of IDM and electronic influences that come up here. And the first track, everything, if you go from basically listening to OK Computer and then going straight to listening to this, and you start with everything in its right place, it's going to be a complete detour of their sound that's going to kind of throw you off. So this was actually my first Radiohead album I listened to, and actually probably it's hard to recommend it to people as the first listen. You'd have to, I think, have a background in electronic music first before I'd recommend it, or a preference towards that, since they're more of an alternative rock band. But it is one of, if you just saw my list for my favorite albums, it's in my top 5 and stuff. I think it's people might make the case for OK Computer or And Rainbows being their best album, but I personally am just more of a Kid A. I just think what they're doing on this mixes up a lot of things that is really nice. So you see Idiotech is probably the best of that electronic sound. Kid A goes in this, they even experiment with the vocal not the vocal melodies, but the vocal tuning of Tom York's voice in this and stuff. But then you get like National Anthem, which is this really big bombastic rock percussion jazz sounding album, and then you get a more somber widening, I don't know if widening would be the right word, but you get a more somber, very intimate track with a guitar song, which is How to Disappear Completely, but you hear it's very chilling background in the whole thing. And then Optimistic is another rock forward track and stuff. But yeah, it's really awesome. I highly recommend, if you can have the patience to like get through this and listen to it a couple times, you will not be disappointed by this experience. And album cover is just as awesome as the album itself. But yeah. Anyway, Amnesiac is... So something to be aware of for these two albums, Amnesiac and Kid A, is that they record these in the same session. Basically, when they were switching out their instruments and everything, and trying to do more music and stuff, or try to record new music during these sessions in the late 90s, early 2000s, they had enough material for 2 albums. And so most of the stuff that you hear on Kid A is also from Amnesiac too. But there's actually some cuts here that are B-sides to Kid A, and so with that being said, I think I'm gonna put it down here in the B tier because it doesn't feel as complete of an album as Kid A is. Not to say that there aren't really good songs on there, like Pyramid Song and everything. I think these are just songs that wouldn't have fit on the theme of Kid A are put onto Amnesiac. So it feels kind of like a batch of B-sides and collections or something like that, because you see there's a different cut of Morning Bell that's on here, and then just but it goes a lot more into the experimental side of everything, and then it includes elements of jazz rock and everything, but it's definitely the weirder side of that experimentation, but I think it's more successful at what it's trying to accomplish with that versus the King of Limbs and stuff. Like their first outing into experimenting in the rock category and elements of IDM and electronic music is just executed so much more better in Amnesiac. I don't tend to find myself listening to this unless I want to listen to more deep cut sounding track, but like Pyramid Song, You and Whose Army, I might be wrong. Because there's like songs in here like Hunting Bears that's literally just a guitar detour instrumental that is really forgettable and stuff. But like Spinning Plates, they get really freaking weird on a lot of these tracks, but I think it's definitely, instead of them just not releasing these at all, I think it was worth them actually releasing a lot of this music. I think it's still, this B-sides, like if you want to qualify it as like a B-sides collection, it's still a lot better than most music and stuff, because at least it tries to do something. Yeah. Anyway, Pyramid Song, all that. Knives Out's fine. There's a little bit, like I said, I don't know if I said it before, but there's a lot of jazz rock elements that they play more into that. So I could see why that doesn't fit into the theme of Kid A. But yeah. Anyway, so OK Computer comes up, and it's another S tier album, because this is probably the most so more to my point of them originating as a 90s alternative rock band with elements of grunge music and Britpop. That OK Computer is basically the most refined version of this sound, but more so in the direction of alternative, and less so with the Britpop and the grunge sound. This is just like a full commitment to like how far we can expand the sound of alternative rock music and everything, like with having played all the same instruments, their guitars and drums and basses as much as they did. And this is probably their most cohesive sounding album in terms of the aesthetic sounds and stuff like that. I don't feel like the cuts off of Kid A are a little bit kind of weirder between tracks and stuff like that, but there's a definite case that this is their best album and everything. Just Paranoid Android, Karma Police. They have, I would say that probably there's not a lot of they're not a really big radio friendly band unless you really like that alternative rock scene. But in terms of alt rock being kind of the status quo sound in the 90s or something like that, they had some pretty good cuts there. They were making like top 40 charts and stuff, I believe. Because you had Karma Police, you had not Let Down. That's a really depressing song. It was Karma Police, and what else was it? Let's go here really quick. If I can find it. Come on. You're not going to load? Okay. Karma Police, and I know Paranoid Android was on there. No Surprises is what I was thinking of. There's a little glockenspiel that they do there and everything, so I thought that was kind of neat for them to do that too. But yeah, anyway, this is a very thematic album and everything. It has a really good concept to it where it's basically like this guy kind of reflecting on his life, going through a moment of, how would you describe it? The moment kind of like where you're seeing your life flash through your eyes when you're at a near-death experiment, because the first song starts with Airbag. It's where he's going through this accident or whatever and stuff, and basically it's his self-assessment of society as a whole or whatever while he's going through all these moments and everything. And so each song is kind of like an analytical form of that or whatever, and then like Fitter Happier is like this track that's an interlude with like a 90s Windows robot sound where it's telling him to like be more be better and stuff and all these things in a very compressed voice or something. And it's just really awesome to listen to. It probably is an album that has very climactic highs and very low lows, with Let Down, and then probably Paranoid Android is probably the heaviest I think it gets, or besides maybe Electioneering is better cut with that. But yeah, I would go to this album probably maybe first or second if we were going to check out their albums. This just might be too intense of an experience, if that doesn't sound edgy at all to say. Yeah, but because what we're going to be talking about next is the Bends, which I think it's the easiest to get into of all the Radiohead albums, so I'd probably put it in the A tier, not because of that, but because basically if Pablo Honey is them starting out in that 90s alt-rock sound with grunge and Britpop, and then OK Computer's basically them taking it as far as they could possible. The Bends is just kind of in between, but it leans more into the Britpop and alt-rock sense of it. These are just really good jams and stuff like that are very reminiscent of the 1990s alt-rock scene. This is pretty much like really good sounding songs or whatever. Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry, and everything like that. They're just really good guitar driven songs or whatnot. They're not overly complicated or whatever in terms of their instrumentation like it is in OK Computer. The songwriting is really good though and everything. So that's why I think it's like this one probably has the most radio friendly of all the songs. It's got a mix of like the songs are actually structured really well, but at the same time the songs are really well written at the same time. So I think that they strike a good balance here and stuff, because I don't think their version of mixing electronic music and art rock and alt rock and all that stuff and art pop is really a radio friendly sound that they do later on. I don't think there's anything really that comes. They might have like one single that'll make like a alternative rock station or indie rock or a college rock station, but with the Bends, I feel like you could play a lot of the songs off here and it would be totally fine. Yeah, but anyway, these are just it's just an album full of good jams and stuff like that. But yeah, Planet, Telex, the Bends, High and Dry, Fake Plastic Trees, all those are really good songs. Just My Iron Lung, Black Star, Street Spirit, Fate. God, there's just so many good songs on here, but these are really good. If you're just looking for alt-rock songs that are pretty safe, but they sound really good, I would definitely recommend doing this. I would just recommend, if you're getting into Radiohead, listen to this first. It's not a complete representation of their whole sound on one album, but it's just one of the easier things to get into, and it's just an awesome sounding album. All right, so Hail to the Thief is I don't think it's considered a double album, but it's their longest running album, and I think it's another example of Radiohead after they basically had the success with Kid A and Amnesiac. It comes after Amnesiac. They have, I think it's got 15 tracks on it. Let me see. But yeah, it comes out in 2003. It has 14 tracks. Sorry. But it's the longest running Radiohead album. It's about an hour long. And it really just tries to kind of get more guitar driven music while at the same time maintaining what they had just done with the electronic and IDM sounds from Kid A and Amnesiac. But it tries to incorporate more of what they did on OK Computer and the Bends. And it has a really mixed result because I think they got a little bit too excited to try and bring back a lot of the sounds that they were doing on there. And it just feels oversaturated in a lot of things. I feel like there's definitely songs on here that merit like the same level of quality that Amnesiac does, where it really feels like a B-sides track and it could have been very limited and stuff. So I'm going to put it on the same level as that. I feel like it's just a little bit too bloated and stuff. I'm not saying there's not good songs on here, obviously. Like the There is an excellent song. 2 + 2 = 5 is a really good opener of an album. And actually, they've got really good album openers, but it's up there and everything. I think it's better than Planet Telex. But yeah, it's just, they're really good about doing their openers. Sit Down, Stand Up. Where I End and You Begin is awesome too. Yeah, but I just feel like there's maybe, I don't know if it's Scatterbrain. I like Myxomatosis, A Punch at a Wedding. Just the slower cuts here, I don't think are their best slow cuts of anything. But yeah, I just think their second time into the electronic foray, when they finally have a recording session, just doesn't pan out as successfully as they could have. And obviously, they have it goes back and forth whether or not they're when they get more experimental with their music, if it's going to be turn out successful or not. Obviously, King of Limbs comes later than this, but that's more of a full commitment to that electronic glitch pop sound. Yeah. Anyway, In Rainbows. Okay, so I've listened to this. I think this is the most recent album I listened to, but I will say, okay, so first off, I'll put it in the S tier. I am not. A lot of people like to have this be their best Radiohead album, and I just disagree. Because what people are saying about In Rainbows is that it's basically what Hail to the Thief could have been, where it's just that perfect blend of electronic music mixed with alternative rock, art rock, and so on. Because it's limited to 10 tracks and stuff, they really just committed to, instead of having, when they were experimenting with this music and stuff, they really just committed to just a solid track list of 10 songs. And this actually, I think, up till this point was their shortest album, and then King of Limbs, obviously, is shorter than that with 8 tracks. But yeah, just everything here goes back to being a really tight-knit, well-structured group of tracks or whatever, more so than the Bends, and obviously Moonshaped Pool, sorry. But yeah, no, it's just really good. The thing that makes it not as good for me is that it doesn't commit to one sound on the album, whereas I feel like that's the case with OK Computer and Kid A, where it leans more heavy into the electronic music, and that's mainly the theme of the album, versus they're going for more alternative rock, art rock sound. This is just kind of a blend of all of that put together, but I feel like it's just not I think I'd rather have more of this, and there's maybe less thematics. There's not as strong as the overall theme in Rainbows versus Kid A and OK Computer, I would say. Um, but there's awesome, like it's awesome. It's got awesome tracks on here. Like 15 Step, awesome opener. Body Snatchers is the first song since probably their debut or maybe the Bends that they get really heavy into their 90s alt rock grunge distortion and stuff. Um, yeah, actually saying it's more art poppy is a good way of putting it, and some elements of dream pop. But yeah, it just kind of has a little bit of everything in it for what their sound is. But it's funny because I don't recommend this being like the first listen as a Radiohead, because I feel like you wouldn't fully be able to appreciate what's going on. And because I feel like it's something I don't usually recommend listening to certain albums before you listen to others, but yeah, I definitely would recommend that waiting until you listen to at least some of their albums chronologically before you go into In Rainbows, because then it'll actually be a lot more enjoyable of an experience to listen to. But yeah, um, yeah, because Weird Fishes I didn't used to be into as much, but I re-listened to it and it's awesome. Reckoner, Jigsaw Falling Into Place is probably my favorite song off the album. It just builds. It just has such an awesome crescendo at the end. Um, Nude is awesome. Yeah. Anyway, so that's about that. So here, I'll do this too. I'll give you a recommendation also. So basically, if you wanted to listen to the albums in order of what's gonna be palatable to you, so that you think you can like get into them, I would recommend the Bends first. Um, the Bends, maybe OK Computer then. Depending on where you wanted to go, you could go to no, that's tough. I'd rather recommend going to In Rainbows before I would go to Hail to the Thief. But at that point, if you liked more of that electronic music, then I would tell you to go to Kid A and then go to A Moon Shaped Pool. But after that, I'd obviously recommend Amnesiac if you like the electronic sounds. But then if you liked more of the 90s alt rock sound, then you could go to Pablo Honey, but it's not really. It's just kind of like if you want to listen to the deep cuts at that point. These are kind of just like if you want to listen to the King of Limbs and Pablo Honey are kind of just if you want to listen to it. Yeah, but and then I think that's about it. Yeah. But I would probably okay. So how would I rank these in order of how much I like them? That's. I might do. Well, hang on. I'll do that. All right. So that's how I'd rank the albums. So I'd go Kid A, OK Computer, In Rainbows, The Bends, A Moon-Shaped Pool, Hail to the Thief, Amnesiac, Pablo Honey, then King of Limbs. Oh, and then I was going to see what the community did for this, too. Okay, so... yeah, I like how they did it by this. Perfect, near perfect, less perfect, still all right. Let's forget about this exists. So yeah, I could see if that's an order of how they wanted it to be. So OK Computers first. I could see this. Yeah. I used to actually have OK Computer being my favorite, but now I changed it. Yeah, I would. Yeah, no, that's about the same as my list. Yeah. Because there's obviously problems with Hail to the Thief and Amnesiac, but yeah, no, that seems pretty good. That's good. That's awesome. Can I go back and will it be saved? Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I just think they're about on the same level as each other, the King of Lambs and Pablo Honey. So I don't. That was pretty. I think that was the closest my list has ever been to the actual community's rank, but it seems everyone's pretty solid on where everything is in terms of the quality of stuff. So it's nice that A Moonshaped Pool being their newest album is really awesome that people like it. But anyway, that's gonna do it for me. I will post it to my YouTube channel, so if you guys want to check it out later, you can, and everything. But yeah, that's my list. Thanks for watching, guys.